bad financial decisions start. Quietly, no announcement, no dramatic moment. Just you, alone, with your phone. It's late enough that the world has stopped demanding things from you. No emails, no messages, no responsibilities screaming for attention. Just scrolling. You didn't mean to open a real estate app. You were checking something else, a notification, a link, muscle memory. But now you're here. And at first it's harmless. One house, then another. You're not even serious. You tell yourself that. I'm just looking. But then something strange happens. You stop reacting to the pictures and start reacting to the prices. Every house that doesn't look like it's actively falling apart has the same number attached to it. $600,000. Not for something extravagant, not for something special, for something normal. A two-car garage that barely fits two cars, a kitchen that feels tired, not luxurious, a backyard that looks like it's been photographed very carefully to hide how small it actually is. And still, $600,000. You scroll slower now. Your thumb hesitates before every swipe. Because you're not just browsing houses anymore. You're doing something else. You're comparing your life to a number. You start doing math without realizing it. Your salary, your partner's income, your savings account, that suddenly feels smaller than it did yesterday. You think, okay, maybe with bonuses. Maybe if interest rates come down. Maybe I'm just being dramatic. So you refresh. The number stays. You open another listing. Same thing. Another. Same thing. And that's when the feeling changes. Not panic, not fear. Something quieter, heavier. The feeling that the world has moved forward without you. And nobody bothered to tell you the rules changed. You tap on a listing. The description loads. The agent calls it a starter home. You actually laugh. Not because it's funny, because it's insulting. A starter home. As if $600,000 is something you casually start with. As if this is a beginner level in a game you somehow forgot to practice for. You scroll through the photos again. The laminate countertops look older than your last phone. The carpet is beige in that way that suggests compromise. The basement has fake wood paneling trying very hard to be taken seriously. And still, $600,000. You put the phone down for a second. You stare at the ceiling, and for the first time, a dangerous thought enters your head. Am I behind? Or is something broken? Because according to these prices, you should already be someone else. Someone with a much bigger income. Someone further along. Someone who made different decisions. And yet, you did what you were told. You went to school. You worked. You paid your bills. You were responsible. So why does this feel impossible? The next morning, you mention it casually. To a coworker. To a friend. To family. And immediately the voices arrive. You can afford it. Everyone stretches for their first house. The bank wouldn't approve you if it wasn't safe. Renting is just throwing money away. Nobody sounds concerned. Nobody says, wait. And that's what makes this so dangerous, because the pressure isn't loud. It's polite. It shows up disguised as encouragement. It sounds like reassurance. It sounds like adulthood. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop asking the most important question, not, can I get approved? But, what does this actually do to my life? My name is Orex, and I've spent years watching people cross this exact line. People who didn't make reckless decisions. People who weren't irresponsible. People who didn't want luxury. They just wanted something stable, something normal. And that's why this conversation matters. Because what's happening right now in housing isn't dramatic enough to feel like a crisis. There's no crash, no alarms, no headlines screaming danger. Just a slow, quiet shift where the numbers stop matching reality, and everyone pretends that's fine. Today, we're going to do something uncomfortable. We're going to run the math most people never run. Not the bank's math, not the agent's math. The math that answers one brutal question. Who can really afford a $600,000 house in 2026? Not survive it, not barely hold on. Afford it. Without turning their life into a constant state of low-grade panic. Because there's a massive difference between owning a house and being owned by one. Here's what makes this so insidious. $600,000 doesn't feel extreme anymore. It's not shocking. It doesn't look outrageous. It looks expected. In many cities, it's the baseline. That's not a dream house. That's the minimum price of entry into neighborhoods with decent schools, reasonable commutes, and streets that feel safe at night. And the moment something becomes normal, people stop questioning it. They stop asking, "Wait, how does this fit with income?" They stop asking, "What happens if one thing goes wrong?" Because the system keeps whispering the same message. This is just how it is now. Banks approve loans based on ratios that assume perfection. Real estate agents price homes based on yesterday's sales. Social pressure rewards ownership and shames patience. Nobody gets paid to slow you down. Nobody gets paid to ask whether you'll still be okay 5 years into a 30-year obligation. So today, we slow it down ourselves, we take the emotion out, we remove the fantasy, and we look at $600,000 the way it actually exists in real life. Before we talk about mortgages, interest rates, or down payments, I want you to answer one question honestly, not out loud, just to yourself. If your housing costs locked you into one job, if it made every emergency feel like a threat, if it turned savings into a luxury, would you still call that success? Because that's the part nobody shows you in listings. They don't photograph the anxiety. They don't show the Sunday night dread. They don't include the cost of constantly doing math in your head. And yet, that's what this number quietly demands. In the next part, we're going to strip away the illusion. We'll break down what a $600,000 house actually costs per month, what income is required to carry it safely, why approval numbers lie, and how people get trapped without realizing it, not to scare you, but to give you something rare: clarity. Because once you see the real math, you can't unsee it, and once you understand it, you stop blaming yourself for a system that quietly changed the rules. By now, most people feel something uneasy, not fear, resistance. Because once you move past the listings, past the photos, past the fantasy, you arrive at the one place people desperately avoid: the numbers. This is usually where the conversation gets rushed. Someone throws out a monthly payment. Someone mentions interest rates. Someone says it's manageable. And just like that, the most important decision of their financial life gets reduced to a single sentence. We're not going to do that. We're going to slow it down. Because the danger of a $600,000 house isn't obvious at first glance. It reveals itself only when you stop pretending and let the math speak. The first lie people are told is simple. They're told that price doesn't matter. Only the monthly payment does. If you can handle the payment, you're fine. That idea alone has destroyed more financial futures than almost anything else in modern housing. Because the monthly payment is not the cost of the house. It's just the part the bank needs to keep you showing up. The real cost lives everywhere else. Let's start clean. No tricks, no exaggeration. Just a $600,000 house in 2026. Traditionally, the safe standard was 20% down on a $600,000 house, $120,000 in cash, not investments, not retirement accounts, not we'll borrow it from family. Actual money. For most households, this is where the dream quietly fractures, because the median American household does not have $120,000 sitting anywhere. Not even close. So people compromise. 5%, 10%. They tell themselves it's temporary. What they don't realize is that the compromise doesn't disappear. It follows them every single month. When you put down less than 20%, you unlock something called PMI, private mortgage insurance. It sounds harmless, almost technical. What it really is a monthly reminder that the system doesn't trust you. PMI usually runs between $250 to $450 per month on a loan this size. And here's the part most people never hear. That money does not protect you. It protects the bank. You're paying extra every month because the bank believes you're more likely to fail. You start home ownership already behind. Let's assume you did everything right by modern standards. You scraped together 10%. That's $60,000 down. Your loan? $540,000. Now we look at interest. In 2026, realistic mortgage rates sit somewhere between 6% and 7%. At those rates, your principal plus interest payment lands around $3,300 to $3,500 per month. That number feels, manageable. That's the trap, because that number is incomplete. Now the real math begins. Property taxes. Depending on where you live, approximately $600 per month homeowners insurance. Thanks to climate risk and rising rebuild costs, approximately $300 per month maintenance. The rule nobody budgets for: 1% of home value per year. That's $6,000 annually or $500 per month. PPA. This because you didn't put down 20%, approximately $350 per month. Now we add it up. Mortgage, $3,400. Property tax, $600. Insurance, $300. Maintenance, $500. PMI, $350. Total, approximately $5,150 per month. This is the real cost, not worst case, not dramatic, just normal ownership on a normal $600,000 house. And this is where something uncomfortable happens. Most people have never seen this number written out cleanly. They've never added all of it together, because if they did, the decision would feel very different. Financial planners suggest housing should stay under 28% of gross income. Banks stretch that to 43%. Let's reverse engineer both. To support $5,150 per month at 28%, approximately $220,000 per year at 43%, approximately $170,000 per year. Pause here. Let that land. A $600,000 house in 2026 is not a middle-class purchase. It requires top 10 to 15% income to carry it safely, and yet this price is being marketed as normal. Here's where people get confused. They say, but the bank approved me. Of course they did. Banks approve based on default risk, not quality of life. They don't care if you feel stressed. They don't care if you can save. They don't care if one emergency wipes you out. They care about whether you'll keep paying until they can repossess the asset. Approval does not mean affordability. It means survivability. Barely. Here's why this disconnect hurts so much. Because on paper, many households almost qualify. They're close enough to believe it's possible. And that belief is dangerous because it convinces people to stretch just a little more. One more risk, one more assumption, one more, it'll probably be fine. That's how people become house poor without ever realizing when it happened. Before we move forward, I want you to ask yourself something honestly. If your housing cost locked you into one income stream, turned emergencies into threats, forced you to delay investing, made rest feel irresponsible, would you still call that success? Because that's what this number quietly demands, not today, but over time. In the next part, we're going to stop talking in theory. We're going to follow a real household earning what most people consider good money. We'll watch what happens when they buy this house. Not dramatically, slowly. And by the end of that story, you'll understand why so many people feel trapped without knowing exactly why. On paper, this household should be winning. That's the part that makes this so unsettling. They did everything right. Good jobs, stable careers, no reckless spending. From the outside, they look like the exact kind of people a $600,000 house is supposed to be for. Now let's meet them. We'll call them the Parkers. Not because there's anything special about them, but because there isn't, and that's the point. The Parkers earn a combined $170,000 a year. Two professionals, mid to late 30s, college educated. When people hear that number, they nod. That's solid. They're doing well. They should be comfortable. And for a long time, the Parkers believed that too. They weren't rich, but they weren't struggling. They paid their bills. They saved a little. They didn't feel behind until they started looking at houses. The $600,000 house didn't feel like a stretch at first. It felt reasonable. Everyone around them said so. The agent showed them comparable sales. The lender ran the numbers and smiled. Friends congratulated them for moving up. The Parkers told themselves the same thing everyone does. We're not being reckless. We can afford this. It's just tight at the beginning. So they bought the house, not because they were greedy, not because they wanted luxury, because they wanted stability. After taxes, deductions, and basic retirement contributions, the Parkers bring home about $10,000 per month. That's their real money, not the impressive gross number, the number that actually matters. And then the housing cost hits. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, PMI. Total, $5,150 per month. Just like we calculated, just like the bank approved. Suddenly, over half of their take-home pay is gone before life even begins. And this is where the quiet shift happens. At first, nothing dramatic breaks. That's why people don't notice the danger. They adjust. 2 car payments, $900 insurance and gas, $600 student loans, $700 groceries, $900 utilities, internet, phones, $500. They do the math one night at the kitchen table. What's left? About $1,250 for savings emergencies. Medical clothing, kids. Anything unexpected. They look at each other. It's fine, one of them says. And they mean it. For now. Here's the part nobody explains. Being house poor doesn't feel like disaster. It feels like constant awareness. You start checking your bank account more often. Not because you're broke, but because you're cautious. Groceries become math. Weekend plans become negotiation. Every purchase gets weighed against the mortgage. You don't feel rich. You feel monitored by a number that never goes away. Month 4, the car needs brakes. $900. They put it on a credit card. No panic, just annoyance. Month 7, the AC struggles during a heat wave. The technician doesn't sugarcoat it. Compressor's going. Estimate $3,800. They don't have it. They finance it. Again, no meltdown, just quiet resignation. Here's the real problem. The Parkers aren't bad with money. They're disciplined. But discipline doesn't create margin when the system already took it. Every dollar is assigned. Every month assumes nothing else goes wrong. So when life does what life always does, there's nowhere to absorb it. Something changes inside them. They stop thinking long-term. Retirement contributions pause, savings goals get postponed, vacations become hypothetical. The house doesn't feel like security. It feels like responsibility they can't put down. They work harder, not to get ahead, to not fall behind. Here's what this does psychologically. You stop taking risks. You stay in jobs you dislike because income disruption feels dangerous. You don't negotiate as aggressively. You don't experiment. You don't rest because the mortgage doesn't care how tired you are. The house quietly owns your future decisions. This isn't rare. This isn't an extreme case. This is what happens when normal prices meet normal incomes. The Parkers didn't miscalculate. They used the same assumptions everyone else uses. That's what makes this so dangerous. If this is what $170,000 looks like, what does $140,000 look like? $120,000? $100,000? What happens when there's only one income? Or kids? Or medical bills? The math doesn't bend. It just tightens. In the next part, we're going to step back and look at the system. Why this is being normalized. Who benefits from you stretching? And why saying no feels like failure when it might actually be survival. This is where the illusion breaks completely. By now, something should feel very clear. What happened to the Parkers wasn't bad luck. It wasn't irresponsibility. It wasn't poor planning. It was predictable. And that's the part that should unsettle you. Because when outcomes are predictable, it means a system is working exactly as designed, just not for you. Let's talk about incentives. Not emotions, not opinions. Incentives. Banks don't make money when you live comfortably. They make money when you carry large loans for long periods of time. A $600,000 house isn't just a home. It's a 30-year revenue stream. Real estate agents don't get paid to protect your future peace of mind. They get paid when the deal closes. Higher price, higher commission. The market doesn't ask whether you'll still be okay in year 5. It only cares whether someone else paid this price yesterday. And culture? Culture tells you that renting is failure, that waiting means you're behind, that stretching is just part of adulthood. So when everything around you whispers, "This is normal," saying no feels like weakness, even when it's the smartest move in the room. Here's the lie that traps people the longest. It'll get easier later. Maybe your income will go up, maybe rates will drop, maybe nothing bad will happen. That's a lot of maybes to attach to a 30-year obligation. The house doesn't care about your optimism. The payment arrives whether life cooperates or not. And once you sign, you can't quietly undo it. Selling costs money. Refinancing isn't guaranteed. Walking away destroys years of progress. So people stay, not because they're happy, because leaving feels worse. This is how it happens. You buy the house, you survive the first year, everyone congratulates you, so you assume the stress is temporary. Year 2, you're still adjusting. Year 3, you've stopped checking savings. Year 4, you haven't increased retirement. You tell yourself, once things stabilize, but they never quite do, because stability requires margin. And margin was the first thing the house consumed. And there's a cost that never shows up in mortgage math. Opportunity. When half your take-home pay goes to housing. You don't invest aggressively. You don't take career risks. You don't relocate easily. You don't rest well. You protect the house instead of building wealth. The irony is brutal. The thing sold as your path to freedom becomes the thing limiting it. So let's replace the wrong question with the right one. Not, can I get approved for this house? But, does this house leave me with room to live, room to save, room to invest, room to breathe? If the answer is no, then the house isn't an asset. It's a liability wearing a dream costume. When you strip away the noise, the conclusion is simple. In 2026, a $600,000 house is realistically affordable only to households earning $170,000 to $220,000 plus. That's the top slice, not the middle, not the majority. And pretending otherwise doesn't make it more achievable. It just makes the consequences harsher. This is the part nobody gives you permission to say. You are allowed to wait. You are allowed to rent and invest the difference. You are allowed to buy smaller, or farther out, or later. There is no award for being house poor, no prize for surviving stress. The real win is optionality, the ability to say no, the ability to pivot, the ability to sleep. Here's a truth that quietly scares industries built on debt. Wealth is not ownership at any cost. Wealth is control. Control over your time, control over your choices, control over your stress levels. A house that takes that away is not building wealth. It's renting your future to a bank. If you're sitting there feeling priced out, feeling like you missed something, feeling like adulthood moved on without you, let me be very clear. You didn't fail. The rules changed. Home prices detached from income reality, and nobody updated the script. Running the real math doesn't make you negative. It makes you dangerous to a system that profits from ignorance. You don't need permission to step back. You don't need validation to protect your future. Sometimes the smartest financial move is recognizing when a game is no longer designed to be won. So, if you take one thing from this story, let it be this. There is a massive difference between qualifying for a house and affording one. And the math doesn't care how badly you want it to work. But it will reward you for being honest.